Shanghai GDG is a very interesting developer community.
I'm glad somebody has asked this question.
This is where the magic happens.
This is primarily a question and answer show. So if any of you out there would like to ask questions.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Basil and
I'm Alan Bongsuvan.
And today we're going to do an app review of what I think is actually a really cool app. This is InstallFree Nexus. They actually have two versions of this app, one with LibreOffice, another one with Microsoft Office. We're going to take a look at the LibreOffice version today. I think it's actually a really cool app. But have you had a chance to play around with this much?
Yeah, this is really nice because as we're moving toward storing our files in the cloud, many of us have legacy files stored in our hard drive. And it's true that Google Docs has and Google Drive has a doc editor that is nice to use, but users want to use to be able to open the legacy files and edit them on the web.
So if you have something where maybe the formatting is a little too complicated for us, then you actually can use the real version of those products in the web, and it's actually really cool. So let's just take a look at their Chrome listing page. You're going to see here InstallFree Nexus with LibreOffice and some screenshots. I already have the app installed, so I'm not going to go through that entire process. But just wanted to show it's pretty well done page here that explains the app, and similarly with the Office version as well. Really important to have these Chrome Web Store pages for people to discover your apps and explain what they do. But really we care about the app itself and some of the features. Here I have in my drive just a couple files that I created earlier. Let's just see what this experience is like. So let's go create a LibreOffice file. And you're going to see here an interesting design issue. And this is partly the way the product works and partly a limitation in the Drive SDK. But you see here that I have to choose what type of file I want to create. And I think it would be nice if we had this in the SDK where we could actually
create new presentation.
Exactly. Right. Create, have multiple actions in the UI. But right now, because they want this to be one install action for the users, they have to have this in their app. But something we can improve upon in the SDK. But I think they handled it really well given that limitation. And let's just create a doc. The cool thing about this is what they're actually doing is spinning up LibreOffice in a virtual machine in the cloud and giving us remote desktop RDP in our browser. It's actually kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
First time you run it, it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Am I running a desktop?
Exactly. So we have the full version of this. If we were doing the Office version, we'd have just regular Microsoft Office running in our browser, and we can just start typing away. So not a very exciting doc, but let's go and save it. And here we'll save in our documents and give it a nice little file name, my file. Having a little trouble typing today. And
it's saving.
Should be saving. And here we go. There's the file. We have our file we created. We can close that, open it back up, and we should be right back to where we did. One of the issues with running an app like this, it is a little heavy. The startup time is slower than using a full editor or full web-based editor like Google Docs. So you have a little bit of trade-off in terms of startup time versus features and functionality. But here we are. We're back to where we were with our file. Earlier, I created this directory. And this is actually goes back to a GDL that we did last week. It was Ali and I, and we talked about the differences of Drive versus the file system, and some of the issues. One in particular is disambiguating files, because we don't have this restriction that file names are unique. So what do you think is going to happen when we open this up in this directory in LibreOffice?
As I can see, you have two files with the same name, so I guess we're going to have a hard time handling this and only show one of the two. Which one? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So let's go in here. And you can see here they actually created basically a virtual file system in Windows, and I can just navigate through my Drive content here. And as you guessed, they only show one file. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't know which one they've actually showed without actually opening this up. So what should they do in this case?
They should show both of the files, maybe having a way to identify that those two files are different.
So doing some sort of putting like a suffix on one of them with like a
suffix,
version or a timestamp or something like that. Yeah, so this is actually a pretty significant issue. It looks like they probably actually they both have about the same timestamp. Not entirely sure which one that is.
You can save it and see what the new timestamp is.
That's true. Yeah, let's actually do that and see what happens. Oh, interesting. They're giving me a. They don't. Let's modify it first and then save it. And there we go. So it was this one. So yeah, it's a little bit of a wart on the user experience there, in that if you do have files with the same name, it's a little bit difficult, or actually nearly impossible to make sense of what happens in that case. Good part is though is that you can access the application fully from within the Drive UI. They also have their own file viewer inside their web application, which lets you navigate. And in this case, they actually do display both files correctly. So it's just within that virtual file system layer that it's not quite handled entirely correct. So to make this possible, one of the things they have to do is request access to all my files. Right?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? Is that the
Well,
right decision in this case, or
we're trying to move away from the broader scope, which gives an app access to an entire user's drive. But as they're building a virtual file system, they don't have a choice but to request access to all of the user's drive. One other way they could do it is only list files they have access to or created, but that will limit the user experience for the applications.
right? So in that case, if they were to do a file open from this, all their legacy files that they hadn't yet launched probably wouldn't show up in this case, right? So, yeah, it's an interesting challenge for apps like this, where they need to have an integrated file explorer. But I think the value of having this actually behave like a real desktop application and look like it has a file system probably was the right decision for them.
Yes.
But they could have done a more restricted version that doesn't require as much permission.
And that uses the Picker API.
Correct. Yeah, that would be interesting. Any thoughts on ways that they would be able to get the picker to work inside a native desktop experience like this?
Yeah, it should be hard, because they will have to fire the picker on the client side on browser and ask the user to choose a file and send it back to their server. So it won't really show as a native file picker. It will show with the Google Picker API UI.
Yeah, I think it would be an interesting experiment to figure out, if that is possible. And personally, I'm not familiar enough with the OpenOffice and Office APIs to know how easy it is to plug in or replace those menu options. But I think it would be something that would be a good experiment for somebody to try and see if that's possible. It definitely would help a lot on the security side to be able to switch over to that more restrictive per file access. Let's just take a quick look at some of the other editors. We can create another one. And what do you want to create this time? We could do a spreadsheet. We can do a presentation.
What do you think?
Or let's do but how about we do a drawing?
Drawing, yeah. Never tried this one.
But anyway, you see that you actually have access to the full suite. And again, you have the Microsoft version of these as well. And let's see if my art skills are any good.
Your trackpad?
Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to do a not so good job here. But you can draw some lines. Oops. Maybe this was the wrong demo to do, as I am not very familiar with the OpenOffice drawing here. But here's some tools down here. So we'll draw a very very simple smiley face.
You're back to selecting.
Okay. LibreOffice is not making me very happy here. And I have terrible art skills. All right, there's my slightly
Smiling.
slightly happy, slightly upset smiley face. But yeah, and we could do spreadsheets as well, presentations, and this actually handles not just LibreOffice, but I think they actually do conversions on Microsoft formats and other common formats as well. So really powerful application for working with a lot of files that you may have had on your desktop before, and you're moving into the cloud. If you're not quite ready to convert those over to Google Doc formats, something like InstallFree Nexus is a really good transitional tool to get you into the cloud, but without having to fully commit to using converting those into a format that's in Google Docs.
But you still get the features of Google Drive, like sharing.
Yeah,
you don't get collaborating, but you can share a file with another user, and they can use the same app as long as they have it installed, and open it with LibreOffice as well.
Exactly, right. So we can share this with other users using the same sharing features of any file in Drive. Once that user gets it, they'll actually get prompted or alerted that this file was created by that application. They'll have an opportunity to install it and start taking advantage of it. So yeah, is there anything else about this that you want to show off? I think you were curious about the approval screen.
Yes, the scopes they are requesting.
Yeah, so let's just take a look at that. What we'll do is just revoke this here temporarily. I'll remove. And then we can go back to Chrome Web Store, add it back in. And we'll do a little refresh. So in theory, this time I should get a prompt. So here's the full list of all the things that they're accessing. So we have account information for single sign-on, full access to all of our documents. So again, you can see just how much data they're actually asking for here. All of our documents, they can download anything, create, move, all that stuff. And you can see why there's so much emphasis on moving towards the per file scope, because this really is a lot of power that you're giving applications, and it's really nice from a user perspective to be able to say, I only want to give you access to the handful of files that are really important for your app. What else? Everything else looks pretty normal. Email address, spreadsheets, photos and videos. So they actually have a lot of functionality in here,
yes.
And we haven't even really looked at some of the photo capabilities. But I think they actually pull in some stuff from Picasa and so on as well.
Also, you can integrate in a doc.
Yeah, that's true. Right, you can exactly import photos into a documentation and so on. So we'll just grant access again, and we're back to where we started. So what are the things that you would like to see in the app? Is there anything other than the issue we saw earlier with the virtual file system? Any features or things that you would like them to do differently?
Do you know if they use the revision features on Google Drive?
That's a really good question. There's certainly I haven't seen anything within the app for doing this. I know some of the Office formats have revisions built into the file itself, but we should be able to go into here, for example, and say manage revisions, and it is actually creating them. So this is just a feature of Drive, and I believe by default we do create a new revision on every
update. Yes.
Right. So they didn't really have to do anything special to get that. So I can go in here and I can do this, or if it's a file format that has built-in revision history, we can use that as well. But it's a really amazing app, I think. Just the fact that this is a remote desktop, the full version of these applications in a browser, and not really running any special plugins or anything. I think it's just Canvas and WebSockets, and it works on Chromebooks. It works on full browser like Chrome.
As long as you have a modern browser, you're good to go.
Exactly, and it really it is just, I think, a crucial piece in getting people from the desktop into the cloud and onto truly being able to work from any device. The only thing I haven't tried this on actually is a mobile device. And
True.
It's I'm not optimistic that it's going to be a great experience running Office on a mobile phone, but it might actually be okay on a tablet, and something we'll give a try and let folks know how it goes.
Yeah.
But definitely something I'm really excited about. And just an overall, solid app. They do have to fix some technical issues.
Yes.
And if you're watching our friends at InstallFree, you can take a look at last week's GDL on file systems and disambiguation, and hopefully fix that one little issue. Any final thoughts?
Well, again, as you've been mentioning many times, I think this is a really good app to have. It helps users move away from legacy file systems and into the cloud, have their files backed up in a secure server, and have their files accessed everywhere. They can use sharing to share files instead of sending a specific file via email. Have multiple users edit those files using the same app and see what other users do on the same file instead of sending a file, getting it back, trying to merge the revisions, etc.
Yeah. So I think that's it for today. Thank you everyone for coming, and we'll be back on Thursday. I don't know if the topic has been set, but I'm sure it will be a very good GDL again. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned.